Hey, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. A little early forenoon yet here. It's KB5MIQ, big boy. Thought we'd just talk a little bit this week about a few subjects I've seen on social media. Um, 10-meter band's doing good. We're getting check ins every night. I'll cover that on my going on the outro here in a minute. Uh, One thing I've noticed, I'm still seeing lots of guys asking about different kinds of radios. And there's a lot of hams out there that like to tell you whether you're getting a good radio or not, and that's good. I mean, that's good. If you're getting something, you don't want anybody to buy something that's going to have a problem with. But I see a term used a lot that, in my opinion, is a little misleading to a new ham, and the term is starter radio in an HF rig. All right, I may get crucified here for saying this, but this is just my opinion on how I look at that. If you have an all band HF rig, and they make all kinds, they really do. My very first radio was a 10 through 160 ICOM 701. Work didn't have warp bands in it. It was made for the warp bands. 100-watt radio, matching power supply, matching desk mic. Didn't have a lot of bells and whistles. Didn't have a lot of the extra filtering in it that a lot of radios have. And didn't have all modes on it. So I didn't even refer to it as a starter radio because it did what I was doing on it. I mean, it did what I was doing on it. It worked great. Um, if you're running a 10-meter mobile and you upgrade to general and want to get on the low bands, then maybe you could have referred to that radio as a 10-meter mobile as a starter radio, but I don't even refer to any radio as a starter radio. What you got in different radios is merely different features. And the more money you spend on a radio, the more features you'll get. More filtering, more modes. You know, like this 897D I got. It's got some filtering in it. Not all the filtering. I didn't buy the extra filtering. But it's HF, 6 meters, VHF, UHF, all modes. 100-watt radio, also capable of taking batteries for portable ops. And 881, 891, very similar type radios. And I've heard of all of those, especially the 891 in mine, referred to as starter radios. I don't call it a starter radio. That's the only radio I've got, other than a Kenwood 2 meter. So if you want an HF rig, pick your one out and run with it. It all depends on the class license you got and what mode you're wanting to operate on. Uh, I've heard the 718 referred to as a starter radio. ICOM 718, that's a rock solid, really good radio. I think it was based on a Marine HF radio, I believe. HKV's got one. That's great radio, except it doesn't have FM on it. It didn't have all the modes on it. Does that make it a starter radio? No, it really doesn't. It just makes it a really good single sideband use radio. So, picking out your first radio, budget of all things. I mean, that's we're all on a budget. Um, what do you plan to do, and how far into the hobby do you think you'll go? You younger people that are big into computers, I can see y'all wanting to get way into digital stuff, and it's probably a lot of fun. I don't get into it. I hadn't got into all the FT8s and stuff like that yet. But spend what you can spend and buy you a decent radio. If it's a used rig, it's a used rig. My first radio was a used rig. I got no problem buying a used radio if I can find one I don't think I have trouble with. But I had the money at the time when I just started off with this new rig, this 897D. But don't let anybody, I don't know what the right word is, talk down about any radio choice you make. Uh, if you've made the choice based on what research you could come up with, and ask some elders about different radios. But don't pay any attention to the term starter radio because that kind of kind of gets people put off and they think, oh my God, this is a starter radio? You mean I got to spend more money than this down the road in this hobby? First off, you don't have to spend any more money than you can afford. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, this hobby is not that inexpensive of a hobby. But compared to other hobbies, it's really not anymore. It all depends on how in depth you want to go to it. I mean, I've seen guys probably 50 grand in antenna farms around their house. If you got that kind of money and want to invest in it, hey, go for it. I don't. My antenna farm looks kind of shabby, but it works. And if it all blew away today, $500-600, I can be back on air pretty quick. Speaking of antennas, and if you're going to use a push-up pole, periodically check your guy ropes. I recommend the Dacron, black Dacron UV resistant for a guy rope. I've used it for years, had real good luck with it. Matter of fact, a couple, 3 weeks ago, I let my pole down to put an antenna on top of it, and I readjusted all my guy ropes. And something that I learned a long time ago, I wasn't a good Boy Scout and I wasn't in the Navy, so knots are not my specialty. When I guy rope everything and tie all my knots off, I take a roll of duct tape up there with me and duct tape the knots down. And I haven't had any guy rope slip since. And we had a little wind come through. Other than that, my stuff made it just fine. So watch your guy ropes, guy your stuff down, and just save you money down the road. Look for you a good rig. Now, I'm going to touch on one other thing because this happened to me several years ago. And I mentioned this same thing happened to a buddy of ours years ago. Watch your power consumption and watch your power supply because you can have some problems. If somebody, especially on single sideband, which is voice PEP, voice peak transmitted, that's where your power comes from, tells you you're dropping out after you start talking, it's probably a power issue. Old guy, Silent Key, now N5QOI, got in this hobby about the same time I did, was talking to Jeff and I one night, and he had a Radio Shack 10-meter mobile hooked to a marine battery. And he would start talking and get 3 or 4 words out, and all you'd hear is bits and pieces. And Jeff told him to turn his battery charger on, and that cured it. His battery was dropping his power out. That was on 25-watt radio. Now, I'll be the first to admit, battery technology has improved leaps and bounds. W5DLX just got him a new, I can't pronounce this word right, Biano, I think that's right. I can't pronounce the word right, battery. And he, hey, the other ham radio cat, he, turd, he got, was on our roundtable the other night and kind of shocked Jeff and me because when he first come up, I said, man, what are you doing? Your radio's louder. And we got to do a little experimenting with his radio. Normally he runs his radio at 50 watts on a switching power supply, and he's got a good S7 signal on his ground wave. But he said, well, I'm on my battery. I got my radio set at 100 watts. Man, he was full S9 and sometimes a little peaking over on me just on his battery. Audio sounded great. And we got to do a little experiment, and he'd switch back to the power supply from the battery. And we don't know what's going on, and it could have been a little bit of band conditions that night, but he was about an S unit better on the battery than his power supply. And he's got a voltmeter on his power supply, and he wouldn't have any problem with it. It's a little strange, could have been a little bit of band issues, but battery technology is really good now. So if you go, especially if you plan on doing some portable ops, a good battery would be a good investment. Now, buy a power supply. There's tons of them out there, switching power supplies. I've seen people building power supplies out of computer power supplies, things like that. If you want to do that, that's great. I'm a boomer. I'm old school. I like old transformer power supplies. And I got a 35 amp Astron that I've been using. I bought it brand new not long after, right before I bought this radio. Simply because my old Astron faded out. How did I know it faded out? You know, you get used to using the power supply. You just turn it on. You don't pay no attention to it. Well, I got to noticing on my 2 meter, when I would talk, the lights would go to dimming and flickering. So I hooked the voltmeter to my power supply and then keyed the Mac, and the voltage fell. So that's a real good way to check your power supply out. I'm going to show y'all right now what I'm talking about. I've got, I don't know if you can tell it or not, but I've got a voltmeter hooked up here, and my power supply is on, showing 14 volts. All right, I'm going to key up 50-watt radio, drop the 10th of a volt. You know, a good multimeter, digital multimeters are fairly cheap. It's a good addition to your shack. Just get you a set of clips, clip it right to the post on the back of the power supply, and you can monitor your voltage. If you ever have any questions, it's a real easy way to monitor your voltage, and you can tell if you're having any problems like that. This little quick, easy tip for a lot of new guys that may or may not have thought about it. And you don't have to buy you don't have to buy a Fluke or a really high dollar multimeter, but a good digital multimeter is a good investment, especially if you do building, troubleshooting, things like that. You can always use a good digital multimeter. Okay. Well, like I said earlier, on our round table, we're getting a lot of check-ins at night, and we really enjoy that. 10 meters at night's been a little weird. It's been kind of open, and we're hearing a lot of nets running. So, like I said, we start out at 450, and if there's a net coming in there, if the frequency's busy, we've been going up 10. So we'll either be 450, 460, 470, 480, or 490. We're not going to go higher than 490 because we don't want to get out of the novice tech portion of the band. And generally, you don't have any problem when you get up above that at night. But if you're looking for us and we're not on 450, just tune up 10. We're on there Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Friday nights, 7:30 to 8:30 at the latest. Generally, I am. I go to bed early. Central Standard Time, KB5MIQ, W5DLX, WD5HKV, those call signs. And please check in with us. We really enjoy having people do that. Enjoy this hobby. Look for your radio. Stay within your budget. And just remember, there's some certain things you have to have. You have to have power supply. You have to have a radio. You have to have a good run of coax. And RG8X, if you're running barefoot 100 watts on the low band, especially on the low band, I use it for everything. A lot of people tell me I shouldn't use it for 440 and above, but I don't go above 440. I don't even operate there much. But I've always used RG8X. I had good luck with it. Now, if you end up running an amp, you may not want to use it for that, but it's good, inexpensive coax, and it's easy to use. Rig you up a dipole, look in the find you an old handbook or a new handbook, either way, and build you some antennas. Appreciate everybody who subscribed to the channel. We hit 339 subscribers. I really enjoy doing these videos. The W5DLX, WD5HKV give you some good ideas for them, and we're really trying to help support this great hobby of ours. Remember, main trading company, Paris, Texas, good place for ham gear. Your local ham pages, ham clubs, 4 States Amateur Radio, Shreveport Amateur Radio, Dallas Amateur Radio, Cowtown Amateur Radio. Good Facebook pages for local information. Ham Radio Flea Market Trade Post, Ham Radio Elmer's, Texas Amateur Radio, and Ham Radio International. All good Facebook pages. Thanks everybody who subscribed to the channel. My email's on my QRZ page. KB5MIQ is my call sign. This is KB5MIQ Big Boy 73.